All right, I'll start about 4 months before I had my stroke. I had two ischemic attacks. I didn't know exactly what they were at the time, but I had tremendous dizziness. I'm an avid skier, and I was out skiing, and I almost fell off getting on the chair, and my times were ballooning, and I couldn't quite figure out why. I was starting to lose coordination. So I went to my doctor, and did a complete physical. I requested a couple tests, like the carotid artery test. Everything came back okay. So he said, "You're perfectly healthy. I don't think there's anything wrong with you." Well, I knew because my father had had 3 strokes. I knew what some of the symptoms were. So I was worried at the time, but also I was also feeling so good that I didn't do anything more about it after the test. Well, then in May, I'd come home from school, teaching school, and I was feeling really great until I got home. And all of a sudden, I just started feeling sick. So I lay down for a while. About 6 o'clock, I felt my right side going numb. And I called my daughter, who was in the health professions. She said, "Call 911 immediately." So I did. By the time the ambulance got there, I was vomiting and I was feeling very, very bad. So they took me down. When I got to the hospital, I told the doctor in the emergency room that I'm having a stroke. I said, "I'm familiar with the symptoms. My right arm is going numb, my right leg, I'm losing strength." So he did the squeeze test on my hand, and he said, "Yes, you're losing some strength in the right hand." But they did some CAT scans and a MRI, and they couldn't find anything. So he said, "I don't think you're having a stroke." I said, "Well, I think I am." So they put me in the hospital overnight for observation. About 5 o'clock, I had a major stroke, totally paralyzed my whole right side. And that was the beginning of then giving me a choice of where to go. And I asked for Mary Free Bed because I'd heard so many positive things about Mary Free Bed. So they gave me the choice, and I came here. And I started a 3-week therapy in Mary Free Bed. Well, I couldn't walk at all. The first day I went down for therapy was, I think, the second day I was here, and I walked maybe 20 feet using the parallel bars, and I was so exhausted I couldn't even make the next session. It was I just really had it was the blood clot was in the brainstem, so it affected mostly my motor coordination and some sensory. So the right side was just totally paralyzed. So I had to start all over, teaching myself how to walk and pick things up with my hands and so forth. So, but they did a wonderful job here. Really were very supportive and very helpful. I was also an avid speed skater, and I found out I couldn't get back to speed skating. I just didn't have the coordination, and I probably could have had I spent the time trying to get back. I did get back to skiing, but it took me a long time before my coordination came back. I lost my sense of kinesthetics. I didn't know where my arms and legs were, which I still have a little problem with that. And when I first started, my right leg would just wander off. I wouldn't know where it was. So I was able to get back to skiing. I've never gotten back to the same level of racing that I did. And finally this year I've decided I'm going to give up on the racing part of it because I'm probably not going to get back to where I was. But I still ski very well. And we have season tickets and have had them every year even since my stroke. So, but I think you have to work on certain things. I probably could have gotten back to being a speed skater again had I put the time and effort into it. But there's a tremendous amount of work to get back to where you were. The other thing I want to mention is my doctor told me that you'll improve for about 2 years and then that'll be it. I found that not to be true. The major improvement occurs the first 2 years, but after that there are still incremental improvements that occur. I mean, I'm much better off now. Every year I find I can do some things I couldn't do before. Button my shirt, just little things like that. So your improvement does occur, it's just at a slower pace after the 2 years. But I also worked very hard the first year on my first 2 years on my therapy. I mean, I really pushed myself. There are some positive aspects to having had this kind of traumatic experience. I mean, it changed my life a little bit and probably made me a little better person. I try to be a role model for some of the other stroke people that just recently had strokes because they look at where they are and wonder, will I ever improve? And, you know, ostensibly when someone looks at me, they don't realize I've had a stroke. I did suffer the same things that everybody else does, but I've been able to overcome a lot of them and make adjustments. And so there's hope. I do want to say that I've learned more in the sports stroke support group than I ever have learned from any doctor. They're very knowledgeable people here who are always on the internet, always asking questions, and I have learned a lot. And I think everybody has that same feeling. They come here and they learn a lot from each other. We find there are lots of similarities between us, the short-term memory, for some people, depression and so forth. But each stroke is different, and people are affected slightly differently. I never did suffer the depression, but I got very emotional after my stroke. I'd cry very easily. I think I became a better person in the sense that I am not as self-centered as I used to be. I was very much into myself and what I was doing, and I am very now willing to work with other people, help other people. I think it really did, in some respects, make me a better person.